Most people who try growing mushrooms at home fail on their very first batch, and they almost never know why. They did everything the video told them. They waited patiently. And then one morning, they opened the box to green mold, a sour smell, or a substrate that just sat there doing nothing. Here's the truth nobody tells beginners. Growing mushrooms is not hard, but it is unforgiving. There are 7 specific mistakes that kill almost every failed batch. And once you know them, your success rate jumps overnight. I'm going to walk you through all 7 in order, with a simple fix for each. Get these right, and your first flush of fresh mushrooms is closer than you think. The number one killer is contamination, and it almost always comes from one thing: working dirty. Mushrooms have a lot of competition. The same warm, moist, nutrient-rich conditions your mushrooms love are paradise for mold and bacteria too, and they grow faster. Most beginners handle their spawn with bare hands on a cluttered counter, with the windows open and a fan blowing dust around. That is an invitation for trichoderma. The green mold that ends more grows than anything else. The fix is simple. Work in the cleanest, stillest room you have. Wipe every surface with isopropyl alcohol, wash your hands and arms, and stop the moving air. You do not need a lab. You need a clean 10 minutes. Your substrate is the food your mushrooms eat: straw, sawdust, supplemented hardwood, or a simple coir and vermiculite mix. Beginners grab whatever's handy and use it raw, and raw substrate is already full of living competitors. If you do not pasteurize or sterilize it first, you are feeding the mold before your mushrooms ever get a bite. The fix depends on your substrate. Bulk material like straw and coir gets pasteurized, held at around 160 to 175 degrees Fahrenheit for an hour or two. Nutrient-rich sawdust blocks need full sterilization in a pressure cooker. Match the method to the material, and you hand your mushrooms a clean plate instead of a battlefield. Moisture is where beginners swing too far in both directions. Too dry, and your mycelium stalls and the substrate cracks. Too wet, and you starve the colony of oxygen and invite bacteria that turn everything to slime. The target is what growers call field capacity. Your substrate should feel like a wrung-out sponge. Squeeze a handful hard and you should get just a drop or two of water, no steady stream. When you are fruiting, the air around the mushrooms needs to stay humid, but the mushrooms themselves should not sit in standing water. Mist the air and the walls of your chamber, not the baby mushrooms directly. As mushrooms grow, they breathe. They take in oxygen and release carbon dioxide, exactly like we do. Seal them in a tub with no air exchange, and that carbon dioxide builds up fast. The signal is unmistakable. Long, thin, alien-looking stems with tiny, underdeveloped caps, all reaching desperately upward for air. Beginners see this and think they need more humidity, when what they actually need is fresh air. The fix is gentle, regular air exchange. Fanning your chamber a few times a day, or adding small filtered holes for passive exchange. Balance is everything here. Enough fresh air to shape healthy mushrooms, not so much that everything dries out. This one breaks my heart, because the grow was working. The grower just could not leave it alone. During colonization, the white mycelium is quietly spreading through your substrate, and every time you open the container to check, you let in contaminants and dry out the surface. Beginners open the lid daily, poke the substrate, and even break it apart to see how it is doing. Do not. Colonization can take 1 to 3 weeks depending on species and temperature, and your job during that window is to wait. Label the date, set it somewhere stable, and trust the process. The mycelium knows what to do. Let it finish before you ask it to fruit. You can do everything else perfectly and still fail if you start with weak genetics. Spawn is your living seed. Grain or sawdust already colonized with mycelium, and like any seed, it ages. Beginners often buy the cheapest spawn they can find, store it too long, or keep it too warm, and then wonder why colonization crawls or stalls. Healthy spawn is bright white, smells faintly of fresh mushrooms or wet wood, and springs back to life quickly when introduced to fresh substrate. If it smells sour, looks slimy, or shows any color that is not white, throw it out. No amount of care downstream fixes bad spawn. Start strong, and store your spawn cool until the day you use it. Mushrooms are sensitive to their environment in ways beginners underestimate. Push the temperature too high, chasing speed, and you favor bacteria and heat-loving molds. Too cold, and growth simply stops. Most beginner-friendly species, like oyster mushrooms, colonize happily in the low to mid-70s and fruit a little cooler. And here's a myth worth killing. Mushrooms do not need darkness, and they do not photosynthesize either. They use light as a signal, a cue for where to form and which way to grow. Indirect ambient light, the kind in a normal room, is plenty. No grow lights, no closets sealed in total darkness. Steady, moderate temperature and soft, natural light. That is the whole recipe. So let us turn those 7 fixes into one simple plan. Start with a forgiving species in a small tub. Prepare a clean, properly moist substrate and pasteurize it. Mix in healthy white spawn with cleaned hands in a still, wiped-down room. Seal it loosely and let it colonize, undisturbed for a couple of weeks at room temperature. When the substrate turns solid white, introduce fresh air and a little humidity. Keep it in soft, indirect light and mist the air around it, never the mushrooms. That is it. Every step on that list is just one of the 7 mistakes, turned around into the thing you do right. If this is your very first grow, make it easy on yourself and start with oyster mushrooms. They are the most beginner-forgiving species there is. Fast, aggressive colonizers that outcompete many contaminants, tolerant of a range of substrates, including straw and even coffee grounds, and quick to fruit. So you are not waiting months for a reward. Save the slower, fussier species like lion's mane and shiitake for your second or third grow, once the rhythm feels natural. Confidence in this hobby is built one successful flush at a time, and oysters are the most likely to give you that first win. The last place beginners stumble is the finish line, harvesting at the wrong time. Wait too long and the caps flatten, curl up at the edges, and start dropping spores, leaving a dusty film on everything and a shorter shelf life. The sweet spot is just before the caps fully flatten, while the edges are still slightly curled under. To harvest, gently twist and pull the whole cluster at the base rather than cutting individual stems, which leaves less behind to rot. And do not stop after one harvest. Most substrates will give you a second and even third flush if you keep them clean and rehydrated between waves. 7 mistakes. Work clean, prep your substrate, dial in the moisture, give them fresh air, be patient, start with strong spawn, and respect the temperature and light. Get those right, and you are no longer guessing. You are growing. If you want the complete step-by-step playbook with exact recipes, timelines, and troubleshooting for every species, everything we covered today and far more is in our Beginner's Grow Guide, linked in the description. Subscribe and grow along with us. Next time we will tackle lion's mane and shiitake on logs. Now go start that first batch. Your future self, standing over a basket of mushrooms you grew yourself, will be glad you did.